Good morning, guys. So our proverb for today is coming from Proverbs 17, verse 18. And it says, "A man lacking in judgment strikes hands in pledge and puts up security for his neighbor." Now we're going to move into the 5 love languages reading. Okay, everyone. So today we're on chapter 4. We're on Words of Affirmation. That's what we'll be talking about, and it's love language number 1, words of affirmation. I want to thank you guys for tuning in and joining. So if you have the book, you can read along, or if you don't, that's okay, because I'm gonna pretty much keep reading it to you guys. So let's talk about words of affirmation, and let me just make sure that it is more focused. Okay. Mark Twain once said, "I can live for 2 months on a good compliment." If we take Twain literally, 6 compliments a year would have kept his emotional love tank at the operational level. Your spouse will probably need more. One way to express love emotionally is to use words that build up. Solomon, author of the ancient Hebrew wisdom literature, wrote, "The tongue has the power of life and death." Many couples have never learned the tremendous power of verbally affirming each other. Verbal compliments or words of appreciation are powerful communicators of love. They are best expressed in simple, straightforward statements of affirmation, such as, "You look sharp in that suit." "Do you ever look incredible in that dress?" Wow. "I really like how you're always on time to pick me up at work." "Thanks for getting the babysitter lined up tonight. I want you to know that I don't take that for granted. You can always make me laugh." What would happen to the emotional climate of a marriage if the husband and wife heard such words of affirmation regularly? Several years ago, I was sitting in my office with my door open. A lady walking down the hall said, "Have you got a minute?" Hold on one second, guys. Okay, walking down the hall said, "Have you got a minute?" "Sure, come in." She sat down and said, Dr. Chapman, "I've got a problem. I can't get my husband to paint our bedroom. I have been after him for 9 months. I have tried everything I know, and I can't get him to paint it." My first thought was, "Lady, you are at the wrong place. I am not a paint contractor." But I said, "Tell me about it." She said, "Well, last Saturday was a good example. You remember how pretty it was? Do you know what my husband did all day long? He was cleaning out his computer files." "So what did you do?" "I went in there and said, 'Dan, I don't understand you. Today would have been a perfect day to paint the bedroom, and here you are working on your computer.'" "So did he paint the bedroom?" I inquired. "No, it's still not painted. I don't know what to do." "Let me ask you a question," I said. "Are you opposed to computers?" "No, but I want the bedroom painted." "Are you certain that your husband knows that you want the bedroom painted?" "I know he does," she said. "I have been after him for 9 months." "Let me ask you one more question. Does your husband ever do anything good?" "Like what?" "Oh, like taking the garbage out, or putting gas in the car, or paying the electric bill, or running to the store to get milk and toilet paper." "Yes," she said, "he does some of those things." "Then I have 2 suggestions. 1, don't ever mention painting the bedroom again." I repeated, "Don't ever mention it again." And let's read this bubble. It says, "Verbal compliments are far greater motivators than nagging words." Okay, so going back to this, "Don't ever mention it again." "I don't see how that's going to help," she said. "Look, you just told me that he knows that you want the bedroom painted. You don't have to tell him anymore. He already knows." The second suggestion I have is that the next time your husband does anything good, give him a verbal compliment. If he takes the garbage out, say, "Dan, I want you to know that I really appreciate your taking the garbage out." Don't say, about time you took the garbage out. The flies were going to carry it out for you. If you see him paying the electric bill, put your hand on his shoulder and say, Dan, I really appreciate your paying the electric bill. I hear there are husbands who don't do that, and I want you to know how much I appreciate you. Or, I really appreciated you running out to the store when I had to finish that project. Every time he does anything good, give him a verbal compliment. I don't see how that's going to get the bedroom painted. I said, you asked for my advice. You have it. It's free. She wasn't very happy with me when she left. 3 weeks later, however, she came back to my office and said it worked. She had learned that verbal compliments are far greater motivators than nagging words. I'm not suggesting verbal flattery in order to get your spouse to do something you want. The object of love is not getting something you want, but doing something for the well-being of the one you love. It is a fact, however, that when we receive affirming words, we are far more likely to be motivated to reciprocate and do something our spouse desires. Okay, now let's talk about encouraging words. Giving verbal compliments is only one way to express words of affirmation to your spouse. Another dialect is encouraging words. The word encourage means to inspire courage. All of us have areas in which we feel insecure. We lack courage, and that lack of courage often hinders us from accomplishing the positive things that we would like to do. The latent potential within your spouse in his or her areas of insecurity may await your encouraging words. Allison had always liked to write. Late in her college career, she took a few courses in journalism. She quickly realized that her excitement about writing exceeded her interest in history, which had been her academic major. It was too late to change majors, but after college, and especially before the first baby, she wrote several articles. She submitted one article to a magazine, but when she received a rejection slip, she never had the courage to submit another. Now that the children were older and she had more time to contemplate, Allison was again writing. Keith, Allison's husband, had paid little attention to Allison's writing in the early days of their marriage. He was busy with his own profession and trying to make a place for himself in that world. In time, however, Keith had realized that life's deepest meaning is not found in accomplishments, but in relationships. He had learned to give more attention to Alice and her interests. So it was quite natural one night for him to pick up one of Alice's articles and read it. When he finished, he went into the den where Allison was reading a book. With great enthusiasm, he said, I hate to interrupt your reading, but I have to tell you this. I just finished reading your article on making the most of the holidays. Allison, you're a really good writer. This stuff ought to be published. You write clearly. Your words paint pictures that I can visualize. You have great ideas. You have to submit this to some magazines. Do you really think so? Allison asked hesitantly. I know so, Keith said. I'm telling you, this is good. When Keith left the room, Allison did not resume her reading. With the closed book in her lap, she dreamed for 30 minutes about what Keith had said. She wondered if others would view her writing the same way he did. She remembered the rejection slip she had received years ago, but she reasoned that she was a different person now. Her writing was better. She had had more experiences. Before she left the chair to get a drink of water, Allison had made a decision. She would submit her articles to some magazines. She would see if they could be published. Keith's encouraging words were spoken many years ago. Allison has had numerous articles published since then and now has a book contract. She is an excellent writer, but it took the encouraging words from her husband to inspire her to take the first step in the arduous process of getting an article published. Perhaps your spouse has untapped potential in one or more areas of life. That potential may be awaiting your encouraging words. Perhaps she needs to enroll in a course to develop that potential. Maybe he needs to meet some people who have succeeded in that area, who can give him insight on the next step he needs to take. Your words may give your spouse the the courage necessary to take that first step. Please note that I'm not talking about pressuring your spouse to do something that you want. I'm talking about encouraging him to develop an interest that he already has. For example, a wife might pressure her husband to look for a more lucrative job. The wife thinks she's encouraging her spouse, but to him, it sounds more like condemnation. Let's read this bubble. It says, encouragement requires empathy and seeing the world from your spouse's perspective. Okay, so getting back to this part. But if he has the desire and motivation to seek a better position, her words will bolster his resolve. Until he has that desire, her words will come across as judgmental and guilt-inducing. They express not love but rejection. If, however, he says, I've been thinking about starting a handyman business on the side, then she has an opportunity to give words of encouragement. Encouraging words will sound like this. If you decide to do that, I can tell you one thing. You will be a success. That's one of the things I like about you. When you set your mind to something, you do it. If that's what you want to do, I will certainly do everything I can to help you. Such words may give him the courage to start drawing up a list of potential clients. Encouragement requires empathy and seeing the world from your spouse's perspective. We must first learn what is important to our spouse. Only then can we give encouragement. With verbal encouragement, we are trying to communicate. I know, I care, I am with you. How can I help? We are trying to show that we believe in him, in his abilities. We are giving credit and praise. Most of us have more potential than we will ever develop. What holds us back is often courage. A loving spouse can supply that all-important catalyst. Of course, encouraging words may be difficult for you to speak. It may not be your primary love language. If you have a pattern of critical and condemning words, it may take great effort for you to learn the second language, but I can assure you that it will be worth the effort. So now let's talk about kind words. Love is kind. If then we are to communicate love verbally, we must use kind words. That has to do with the way we speak. The same sentence can have two different meanings depending on how you say it. The statement, I love you, when said with kindness and tenderness, can be a genuine expression of love. But what about I love you? The question mark changes the whole meaning of those three words. Sometimes our words say one thing, but our tone of voice says another. We are sending double messages. Our spouse will usually interpret our message based on our tone of voice, not the words we use. I will be delighted to wash dishes tonight, said in a snarling tone, will not be received as an expression of love. On the other hand, we can share pain, sadness, and even anger in a kind manner, and that will be an expression of love. I felt disappointed and hurt that you didn't offer to help me this evening, said with gentle directness, can be an expression of love. The person speaking wants to be known by her spouse. She is taking steps to build intimacy by sharing her feelings. She is asking for an opportunity to discuss a hurt in order to find healing. The same words expressed with a loud, harsh voice will not be an expression of love, but an expression of condemnation and judgment. The manner in which we speak is exceedingly important. An ancient sage once said, a soft answer turns away anger. When your spouse is angry and upset and lashing out words of heat, if you choose to be loving, you will not reciprocate with additional heat, but with a soft voice. You will receive what he is saying as information about his emotional feelings. And the bubble says, forgiveness is the way of love. You will let him tell you of his hurt, anger, and perception of events. You will seek to put yourself in his shoes and see the event through his eyes, and then express softly and kindly your understanding of why he feels that way. If you have wronged him, you will be willing to confess the wrong and ask forgiveness. If your motivation is different from what he is reading, you will be able to explain your motivation kindly. You will seek understanding and reconciliation, and not to prove your own perception as the only logical way to interpret what has happened. That is mature love, love to which we aspire if we seek a growing marriage. Love doesn't keep a score of wrongs. Love doesn't bring up past failures. None of us is perfect. In marriage, we do not always do the best or right thing. We have sometimes done and said hurtful things to our spouses. We cannot erase the past. We can only confess it and agree that it was wrong. We can ask for forgiveness and try to act differently in the future. Having confessed my failure and asked forgiveness, I can do nothing more to mitigate the hurt it may have caused my spouse. When I have been wronged by my spouse and she has painfully confessed it and requested forgiveness, I have the option of justice or forgiveness. If I choose justice and seek to pay her back or make her pay for her wrongdoing, I am making myself the judge and she the felon. Intimacy becomes impossible. If, however, I choose to forgive, intimacy can be restored. Forgiveness is the way of love. I'm amazed by how many individuals mess up every new day with yesterday. They insist on bringing in today the failures of yesterday, and in so doing, they pollute a potentially wonderful present. I can't believe you did it. I don't think I'll ever forget it. You can't possibly know how much you hurt me. I don't know how you can sit there so smugly after you treated me that way. You ought to be crawling on your knees, begging me for forgiveness. I don't know if I can ever forgive you. Those are not the words of love, but of bitterness and resentment and revenge. The best thing we can do with the failures of the past is to let them be history. Yes, it happened. Certainly it hurt. And it may still hurt, but he has acknowledged his failure and asked your forgiveness. We cannot erase the past, but we can accept it as history. We can choose to live today free from the failures of yesterday. Forgiveness is not a feeling. It is a commitment. It is a choice to show mercy, not to hold the offense up against the offender. Forgiveness is an expression of love. I love you, I care about you, and I choose to forgive you. Even though my feelings of hurt may linger, I will not allow what has happened to come between us. I hope that we can learn from this experience. You are not a failure because you have failed. You are my spouse, and together we will go on from here. Those are the words of affirmation expressed in the dialect of kind words. Humble words. Love makes requests, not demands. When I demand things from my spouse, I become a parent and she the child. It is the parent who tells the 3-year-old what he ought to do and, in fact, what he must do. That is necessary because the 3-year-old does not yet know how to navigate in the treacherous waters of life. In marriage, however, we are equal adult partners. We are not perfect, to be sure, but we are adults and we are partners. If we are to develop an intimate relationship, we need to know each other's desires. If we wish to love each other, we need to know what the other person wants. The way we express those desires, however, is all important. If they come across as demands, we have erased the possibility of intimacy and will drive our spouse away. If, however, we make our needs and desires known in the form of a request, we are giving guidance, not ultimatums. The husband who says, "Could you make that good pasta one of these nights?" is giving his wife guidance on how to love him and thus build intimacy. On the other hand, the husband who says, "Can't we ever have a decent meal around here?" is being whiny, is making a demand, and his wife is likely to fire back. "Okay, you cook." The wife who says, "Do you think it would be possible for you to clean the gutters this weekend?" is expressing love by making a request. But the wife who says, "If you don't get those gutters cleaned out soon, they are going to fall off the house. They already have trees growing out of them," has ceased to love and has become a domineering spouse. When you make a request of your spouse, you are affirming his or her worth and abilities. You are in essence indicating that she has something or can do something that is meaningful and worthwhile to you. When, however, you make demands, you have become not a lover but a tyrant. Your spouse will feel not affirmed but belittled. A request introduces the element of choice. Your mate may choose to respond to your request or to deny it, because love is always a choice. That's what makes it meaningful. To know that my spouse loves me enough to respond to one of my requests communicates emotionally that she cares about me, respects me, admires me, and wants to do something to please me. We cannot get emotional love by way of demand. My spouse may in fact comply with my demands, but it is not an expression of love. It is an act of fear or guilt or some other emotion, but not love. Thus, a request creates the possibility for an expression of love, whereas a demand suffocates the possibility. So let's talk about notebooks and more. Words of affirmation are one of the 5 basic love languages. Within that language, however, there are many dialects. We have discussed a few already, and there are many more. Entire volumes and numerous articles have been written on these dialects. All of the dialects have in common the use of words to affirm one's spouse. Psychologist William James said that possibly the deepest human need is the need to feel appreciated. Words of affirmation will meet that need in many individuals. If you are not a man or woman of words, if it is not your primary love language, but you think it may be the love language of your spouse, let me suggest that you keep a notebook titled Words of Affirmation. When you read an article or book on love, record the words of affirmation you find. When you hear a lecture on love or you overhear a friend saying something positive about another person, write it down. In time, you will collect quite a list of words to use in communicating love to your spouse. You may also want to try giving indirect words of affirmation, that is, saying positive things about your spouse when he or she is not present. Eventually, someone will tell your spouse and you will get full credit for love. Tell your wife's mother how great your wife is. When your mother tells her what you said, it will be amplified and you will get even more credit. Also, affirm your spouse in front of others when he or she is present. When you are given public honor for an accomplishment, be sure to share the credit with your spouse. You may also try your hand at writing words of affirmation. Written words have the benefit of being read over and over again. I learned an important lesson about words of affirmation in love languages years ago in Little Rock, Arkansas, when I visited Mark and Andrea in their home on a beautiful spring day. The setting was idyllic on the outside. Once inside, however, I discovered the truth. Their marriage was in shambles.